Thanks for being here. And you met our panelists, Charisse, Nicole, and Ekwa. And all of us work together often. We're colleagues. Charisse, Nicole, and I work together at Culture House. And Ekwa is one of our frequent collaborators and the director of one of the episodes of Growing Up, and an incredible director. So we're excited to be here and talk to you about two of our shows and the work that we do at Culture House, you know, working with streamers, producing series, what all of that looks like, the good, bad, and the ugly. And, you know, I love to do this. I'm a board member at Center for Communications, and it's such a pleasure to have all of you here and privilege that you are spending your evening with us. I always like to start by asking the audience just a little bit so we know who's here. Do we have folks who are sort of like interested in being producers? Just raise your hand. Producers,
all
right.
Nice.
We got some directors in the house, okay.
Nice.
Some camera folks, cinematographers.
Oh.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? Shout it out. What are you looking to do? Creative.
Okay.
Writing, writers.
Right. I heard creative executive.
Yes.
Yeah. EPing. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Fantastic. And people who are interested in documentaries, and then
Nice.
folks who are interested in scripted. Cool. All right. Great
Oh,
mix.
wow. Okay.
All right. Well, you got it all here. And so feel free to ask us what you want to ask us. But we'll start by just kind of getting to know our panelists and us, and knowing that a lot of you are looking to sort of find your way and path into the industry. We'll do our best to kind of give you real anecdotes and things and learnings from our experience that hopefully can help you as you break in and start your illustrious careers. So, Ekwa, let's start with you. Could you tell us like a little bit about yourself and your background, how you kind of found yourself into directing?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Ekwa. I am born in California. My family is from Tanzania, East Africa. I was raised in Kenya, and I came to New York many, many moons ago to go to film school because Spike Lee was the only black filmmaker I'd ever heard of, and he went to NYU, so I was like, I'll go to NYU. And I went to film school at a time before digital, but right on the cusp. So by the time I finished my fourth year undergrad, all the equipment that I'd learned on was no longer available. So it took some years to sort of relearn digital and, what was accessible at that time, because anyone here can say, the price of what it cost to make a film, or what it cost to, or how one could get into the industry, and the kinds of things that they would teach us in film school just were obsolete by the time I graduated. And so there was a relearning, and then there was the housing crash in 2008, and nobody had money anymore, and so everybody had to relearn how to make film, because that was also the advent of the Red Camera and Kickstarter. And so people sort of using grassroots and communities, their immediate communities, as opposed to waiting for a studio to greenlight you, in order to make content and being able to distribute content digitally on YouTube, on whatever. And as an African filmmaker, having access to digital distribution, has been a game changer for me as a filmmaker in terms of being able to find my audience, not having to explain myself, explain my stories, explain the people that I'm talking about and the stories that I'm telling, but just being able to tell the stories and then find the audience that relates to that. So that's been part of my journey.
And how did you get your first sort of paid gig as a director? What did you have to do or show, as we're thinking about some of the directors in this room, what did you have to do before someone was like, yeah, you know what, you're worth a paycheck on this one?
Yeah. Well, coming out of film school, the unfortunate part is unlike, accounting. It's not like I have a certificate in accounting, and so people are like, oh great, you can come and account over here. It's like, I have a certificate in filmmaking, good for you, but what have you made?
Right.
And so I had to make stuff, and a lot of that was putting stuff together with friends, the Kickstarter that I mentioned, the $600 movie then became the $1,000, short film, or the $2,000 short film, or, whatever, sort of moving up like that. And in that process, the good thing about social media and raising money is that you're also raising audience, and you're raising support, and you're raising the people who are going to be championing you and cheering you, which obviously starts with the aunties and the cousins and the friends, but then, expands from there. So having to build my reel, essentially, in order to be able to show people that I can do the thing that I say I can do, and hopefully increasingly more and more and bigger projects.
Yeah. What was your first, sort of paid gig as a director?
Paid.
I know. Liberal use of the word paid.
My first paid gig as a director was my feature film.
Wonderful. Wow.
Was my feature film where I paid myself.
Amazing. Look at that. Which went to Sundance.
Yeah. Which went to Sundance, yeah. I would say that's my first. I was supposed to have a paid gig that producers ended up running away with all the money, so we didn't get paid. But it happens, the indie life, welcome. But yeah, that was my first paid gig.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Well, we'll get more into that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ekwa, for the overview. And Nicole is one of my partners at Culture House, and an executive producer and showrunner for the show you saw growing up, and also an EP on Hair Tales. So, Nicole, tell us a little bit about how you got to now.
By the way, Ekwa got married yesterday.
I
was just noticing your ring. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And my baby is here, so if there's a baby that starts crying, it is all my fault. I'm very sorry. But my journey really started, I ended up dropping out of college. I am not, sorry, those that are coming to a college-led panel. Oh boy. She didn't like that I dropped out. She really wished I would have stayed in. But I'm not a desk learner. I'm an experiential learner. I really do better getting out there and learning. If I have to just learn it to learn it, it never sticks. And so when I learn it because I have to do it, it like permeates through everything. So I knew that college wasn't going to really be my thing. And so I ended up dropping out, and I ended up working in the NGO kind of world for a little bit. I have my own separate thoughts, but I moved on pretty quickly from that, realizing, coming away from that experience, that storytelling is really, I was thinking I was kind of changing the world in these kind of grassroots aid organization type things, and realizing that storytelling is actually what changes the world. Hearing other people's stories, being able to help other people tell their stories, telling your own stories, that's what actually brings us together, and that's what actually provides the framework for change and for all of us to kind of grow and evolve together. And so both my parents are writers, and they were like, "Oh, great! Did you just figure that out?" And so, I ended up moving to the East Coast to write. My father was putting out a book at the time, and I was writing with him, and I ended up getting involved with a film festival. I started writing my first screenplay, which is still not done. And I remember I was also waiting tables, just like trying to make things happen. And there was, in the small town that I was in New Hampshire called Portsmouth, there was like one filmmaker that had made a movie with like John Goodman like a while ago and he's like the filmmaker in town. And I know that a lot of times, the film industry is just so difficult to like break into. Like you never, like what you were saying, like you knew Spike, that was it. And like, I didn't even know that it was something you could do or something you could be in the film and television industry. It felt so far away and so unreachable and ungraspable. And then here was this like filmmaker that was coming into my bar every night that had made a movie with John Goodman. And so my goal, I was going to get his first 30 pages to chase. Like, that was it. And I was like, so I like finally work up the courage one night, like as we're like closing down, and he was like, Nicole, you are cannonballing into the, I still remember this, you are cannonballing into the deep end of a pool you don't know how to swim in. You need just a little bit of experience. I will be glad to read whatever you send me later, but you should start learning how to get experience. There's a great film festival in town, and you should start there, start to kind of learn what it's like in this independent film world. And so I did, and I ended up working my way up to programming director at the film festival. And that was amazing because I was able to invite 100 films every year to come screen, but that was an introduction to producers, directors, cinematographers, all of these people that I was gaining all of these contacts with, and then invite them to see what I could do production-wise. And so I was starting to produce the event as well. And so through that, I started to meet all the local filmmakers, as well as being able to invite a lot of people from everywhere to town. And that's when I actually, by way of that, got introduced to Resham as she was working on an HBO development deal that was connected to one of the features that I had there. And so we started working on that in 2000, very end of
14?
Yes, very end of 2014. At that point, I had started to kind of PA on local sets. Like, I will say, a film set is a film set is a film set. Get on any film set that you can, because learning how that works and being a part of that and seeing it from every angle and every level is really what helped me get to show running and understand all the positions once I got there. Like, my PA experiences were invaluable, even though I was the worst PA ever, because I was already being like, wait, I can make things more efficient. And they were like, just do what we tell you to do. And I was like, no, but I can, and I'm like trying to like do all these things. And now I realize, like, having other jobs, I was like, wow, was I a bad PA? But it was still invaluable, and I was a human parking cone, just holding spots for directors as they drove up to places. But all of that was just so helpful to see, and the PAs that I got to work with are now financiers, and they're production designers, and they're all of the people that I get to still work with now. Anyway, got to meet Resham. Resham really believed in me, I think, in a way that no one else did at that time, and she really trusted me and helped level me up to be able to be on bigger and bigger sets. And so I started as an associate producer and then a producer, and then when we founded Culture House together, she asked me to be her partner. And so it was just a really amazing relationship with Resham, where she saw something in me that I didn't have those hard skills yet, but she saw that I could learn them and I could execute on them, and that I had something. And with our other partner, Carrie, as well, Carrie came over from politics and had no experience in film and television. But what I love about Culture House is that isn't as important as like knowing that you have that ability to learn and that you do have that ability to level up. And so that's what we try to spot in people. I'm jumping all over the place. But now we're at Culture House, and I got this opportunity to show run, which was my first time show running, and was really incredible. Show running is one of those things that if you can't show run unless you've show run, and so you have to like find another person to take a chance on you. One of our other partners, Marjan, I don't know if you remember my introduction to Marjan, who's an incredible executive at Disney, started as a freelance producer as well, and associate producer and assistant to directors. And we were pitching a show together about entrepreneurs, and we had this experience, and then she ended up going over to the network side. And so when I got pitched as the showrunner, she had already had this experience with me and trusted me and got me over the line. And so that was a really great thing. But your entire career, you're going to need people to take leaps of faith on you. Like, that's just what it requires, because there's so many kind of barriers and things to get through. But I feel just really lucky for the people that really came alongside me and did that for me. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Wow. Well, Thanks, Nicole. That's great. And, as you can see, Nicole and I are very close colleagues and friends, but also just that your story is not really a straight line, right? And to never be kind of discouraged by any of the experiences and really ensure that you're opening yourself up to especially early on in your career, so many experiences, and not being stuck on like, I must get this title or this or that. Just get yourself as much information as possible. Which leads me to Charisse, who is also at Culture House. Oh, am I echoing and sound okay? All right. So Charisse, please tell us like how you got into the business. You have a slightly different trajectory, which is also great.
I'm gonna say that I'm very happy to be here. I'm gonna learn a lot. I'm a little I'm just learning from you guys very much, and I'm a little nervous in public speaking. I'm not really very good at it.
That's not true.
But no. But yeah, I went to BU, Boston University. Anyone in the house? Studied film and TV. Oh, nice, yeah. Studied film and TV there, and then came to New York and got a receptionist gig. And so I just met a lot of people. Was literally the first face that everybody saw, and just met directors and producers, and then grew my role within the production company, and then decided to go to freelance as I was assistant, then coordinator, and then went freelance as associate producer, and then met Ray along the way during like my year freelancing. And sorry, I rushed through that because it's not as illustrious as maybe some of my colleagues. But yeah, it was just really, as Ray said, just meeting a lot of people and just like trying to attach to people's hips and get the experience that I could. And then when I kind of was freelancing, just jumping from gig to gig, with the network that I had built up during my first couple of years at the production company that I was at, I just built a solid network of people who liked me, and I tried to prove myself. And then so I just was working, as an AP on like short music, a lot of music documentaries, it seemed like. And then I met Resham along the way, and we just really hit it off because I feel like we just share a lot of the same values when it comes to storytelling. And so, very long story short, but after hitting it off, she got to bring me on. Both Nicole and Ray brought me on to work on Growing Up, which started in 2020. We'll get into that, started in January 2020.
Production.
And exactly, and then, years later, but yeah, so that was, yeah.
That's great. Well, and I think what's great about Charisse's story, and to add to that, because I think that there's a lot that, that can be helpful to this audience, is what you skipped an important beat, which is that Charisse was working at a big production company and assisting various producers and directors, and it was a producer friend of mine that sent me a note and said, hey, this amazing young person Charisse is freeing up, and you should talk with her. So that tells us that relationships are important, and take everyone that you interact with seriously, because you don't know who can help you to the next thing, right? And I wouldn't have met Charisse had that person not sent me a note. And then what was super exciting for us is that when Charisse came in to talk with us, she had written an entire TV show about Black women in rock and roll. And it was an incredible deck that was really well researched. All of the episodes were built out. Great idea. And we were like, damn. And so what's great is she came in and was not like, oh, I'm interviewing for this or that. She was like, no, I'm awesome, and I have this great idea, and I tried to make it here, and people didn't see it, and what do you think? And that show will get made, but it's gone through an incredible process. Even in the time that Charisse has been with us, we've had to deal with Westbrook, which changed. And then we had, so the point being is that it's never too early in your career to put something together, put your passion into something, and come in and show people your value. And I think that was what really impressed us about what Charisse was doing. And so that's something I've learned from too, is to always be thinking about what value can I bring to the table, and to not be shy about what you're good at and put that out there. So that's a little bit of how we all got started, it sounds like. Very briefly, I can share my own story. I, like Equa, went to NYU undergrad. Tish, I don't know if we both knew that, but we did. And so I was lucky enough to be able to go to film school. With that said, I don't think you need to go to film school in order to be a filmmaker. But I really spent, the first 10, 12 years of my career being on every kind of set, like what Nicole said, so really exposed myself to docs, features, narratives. I've been on like terrible, horrible, cold nights of short films in freezing weather, and also really big budget features where like nobody cared whether I was there or not. And I think all of those experiences have made me into a stronger producer, right? So I always encourage that. And I always knew for me personally that I'm an entrepreneur by blood, so it was just a matter of time before starting my own business. But I trained and I took it really seriously, and I worked at Viacom for 8 years, and I learned from executives, and some great ones, some not so great ones, and all of those experiences informed me. So I always also encourage folks, like, if get experience on the network side, get experience on the independent side. Those things all help you to inform understanding the business. And so, as we started Culture House, we've built out multiple, the work that we do with brands, the TV shows that we make, scripted and unscripted, and all of those things. It takes time to build, and so it's like I said, never a straight line. So we'll kind of go back down the train here, but I think what would be great is, as you're thinking about young, people who are getting into their careers, is there anything that you could share that you look for in collaborators or people that you're looking to work with or maybe hire for your jobs as a director, as a producer, what is it that feels like, okay, this is somebody that, has potential, or that I want to work with, or want to continue conversing with?
For me, there's a few things. I mean, depending on the position, obviously, but in general, I like working with nice people.
Yeah.
Just kind people.
Very true.
People that are nice to be
Yes.
around.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to spend hours and days and months and years sometimes with people, and it's really hard to do that if they're super complainy or super negative or super, whatever it is. You don't want to do that. And so, nice people is like number one, so people who sort of match my energy, or at least we can get along. You don't necessarily have to match it, but at least we can get along in that aspect of things. It's been, I've worked with producers who were amazing and supportive and collaborative and helped, to get the thing together, and that's, these are the people that you end up working with over and over again. And then I've worked with people who, like, I know they're taking advantage of other people, even if they're being nice to me. And it's like, it's just going to be a minute until you turn around and you're doing something shady to me too. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's on producer level, that's on PA level, that's on any kind of level. So nice people would be number one. And then, as much as I encourage and think it's important for you to, show me who you are, I'd love to know your talent, like all of those things, like just kind of knowing when that is. Like if I'm really focused on trying to figure out how to get my actor to do a thing that they need to do, and you're busy pitching a show to me, it's probably not the best time for me to be able to focus or give you the attention that you need. What would be useful is for you to help me to do that thing, or like show me that you can take some sort of leadership. Hey, I noticed this actor is having this problem, and so I brought them a latte. Do you think that's okay? So that tells me something about, like, you're observant and you're thinking about, and you're trying to help me think about them as well, and get the job done efficiently, et cetera, and so therefore I can lean in a little bit more when you're now telling me the thing that is important to you, for example. What else would be important? Somebody who, as I mentioned briefly before, my path took a really long time because of like the whole digital revolution and all of these other things. While I don't feel that everyone should take 30 years to make their first feature or whatever it is, I do think that there's something valuable in applying yourself and doing the work, taking the steps, gaining the experience, whatever it is. And I feel like a lot of times, like I teach, I've taught the new school at NYU, most recently at Feuerstein Grad Film School, Brooklyn College. And one of the things that I find with students is that people are impatient. And you know, part of it is I need to pay my bills and I'd like to make a living off of this industry, and I get that, we all do. And part of it is I put a picture on Instagram and got 1,000 likes, so I don't know why this is taking so long. You know, like you're used to kind of getting affirmations quickly. And so what happens is that if that doesn't happen as quickly, if your teacher is not like, you're amazing, you're a genius, go do it, then it feels like I failed. And so I should stop trying, or I should stop applying myself to this thing because I clearly don't have what it takes. And that's not true. Like, talent is one thing, but you know, you do have to practice, and that's what this industry is, an apprenticeship. Producing, directing, like any of these, it's an apprenticeship. Like I said, you get the certificate maybe, or you don't go to film school, but you get on the set or whatever it is, even as a director, even if you got the gig with Disney or whoever, you know, whatever big network or studio it is, it doesn't mean like, and now I will never have to work again. My work here is done. Like, you're constantly learning new things and having to practice and be better and better, because every actor is different, every set is different, every situation is. And so somebody who can have that stamina, I guess, to continue to learn and not just get frustrated because like it should be great already, we'll just have more longevity together.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
That's great. I love that. And I think what's really great about that is that this is not necessarily an industry with instant gratification or quick gratification, you know? And oftentimes there's a gap between your taste level and your capability. Right. And so that taste gap takes time to close and should not be something that discourages us. So that's important to know, that like the first thing you make might kind of suck, and that's totally fine. What about you, Nicole? You're always hiring, and like maybe you can explain a little bit what a showrunner does, because I think that's kind of an opaque thing for people to know exactly what that entails, and some of the things you're looking for when you're hiring people.
Well, I mean, I've only done it once, so I know what I did for it. And it's always really interesting to me, as Equa was saying, like just how much of a learning process it always is. Like it took me 5 years at the film festival to be like, oh, this is the job. You know, it took me 5 years of producing to be like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And like, I think I'm learning that now with show running. And so for in television, so a lot of times films and television have a little bit of a different hierarchy. And in my experience, the film hierarchy, really a producer collaborates with the director, but the director has that kind of top-down creative vision. They're working with the producer. Like a lot of times they're either hired by the producer or the director has a vision and then brings on a producer to help execute that vision. And so, but a lot of those calls are coming from the director, and then the producer is doing like all of the hiring and building the team in order to execute that vision. Well, in television, there a lot of time in scripted television, you're working with a writer's room, and the writer's room really run the show. And in documentary, even though there's not a writer's room per se, although ours kind of had one, as we really tried to build real stories into complex arcs and things that you would find. What happens in television is that the showrunner is the head creative lead, and so they bring on the directors that help execute aesthetic and style and vision for particular episodes oftentimes, but the showrunner is keeping tabs on production, on post-production, is making all of those creative shots, and the director kind of plugs in to that creative vision. Rather, does that make, did I explain that well, how the difference between that? And so then the showrunner hires her team of producers who become the most valuable people there that then help hire and bring on the rest of the team. But it's kind of like the showrunner then is the main creative force, and then the directors help execute that creative vision. And so for me, hiring, I mean, echoing Equa 100% on the nice people thing. Like every call I'm on, I'm like, do they suck? Okay, then no. But so just being a real person, I think so many times I feel like people think they need to project or be someone different or have it all together, when understanding that you don't know the answer is sometimes the most valuable thing that you can say in the conversation. So knowing what you don't know, which is a very difficult thing, like understanding what you don't know is so valuable. So I always look for people who are confident but humble and really willing to learn, really hungry to make themselves invaluable. And I think that was something that Resham kept coming back to, is like, and that's what I really tried to do. Like, okay, I don't know how to do any of this. I'm learning on the fly. I'm doing all of these things, but what do these people seem like they need help with? And how can I plug myself in a way that supports them? Because then I become invaluable to that process. And so looking for people who are thinking about it like that, not just thinking, like, because there's times where I'm sitting at a tutoring center in New Jersey doing a $5,000 branded content piece being like, how does this get me to show running? So like, you're going to do the, like literally, and just crying in different places being like, how do I get there? But knowing that all of those things play their part in getting there and making yourself invaluable. A set is a set is a set. Running that tutoring job set helped me do what I did on Growing Up. And so knowing and plugging into all those experiences and allowing doing the best job you can at all of those things really helps you level up into those different executive positions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole, for breaking that down a little bit. And I think, Charisse, what would be great too is, look, there's many different kinds of producers. So maybe you could describe a little bit.
Because Charisse has done every different kind of producing.
Charisse is just coming off of, being a producer on Growing Up, which you saw. So she was on set and really in the physical nuts and bolts of production and really part of the creative, and then just have come off of story producing and post-producing Hair Tales, where she was really involved in post and working close with the editors and shaping story. So maybe you could describe those producerial roles a little bit for people, so people understand the difference between
You're doing so much.
Yeah. Just what you did basically for the two shows.
Yeah, it's like you really are, it's kind of like all hands on deck for so many different things. Like for Growing Up, I was a big part of the casting process, this is a 10 episode series. So it was a lot of spots to fill, because it's exploring the coming of age journey, like through 11 different distinct young people's stories. So I was very involved in the casting process for that. Hundreds of people. Like through Zoom calls. So it's like one day, like I'm just DMing 18-year-olds on Instagram, which sounds weird, but like that's, are you interested, in telling your coming of age story, and like getting on Zooms and spending the day on Zoom calls and meeting these amazing young people. And then, throughout, like, that's a lot of and then also the development process, like with Nicole, which is like, kind of our own like writer's room, and, writing these shooting treatments for like months. It's an incredible experience. So it's very rewarding and just a lot of fun. And so there's that process, and like the pre-production.
Do people know what a treatment is?
Oh, right.
Yes, okay. So treatment is, some people maybe not, but just like a breakdown of an episode, but kind of in story form, like paragraph form. So you're kind of telling the story of what's going to happen in an episode or a film or any of it in that. I didn't know what a treatment was when I first started, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to Google that.
Yeah. No, we like spent like months in the development process, writing treatments, casting, and it was a lot of fun. And then like when pre-pro, when we were actually going to, we're actually going to make this show. It's just spending like just hiring up, crewing up, and just that, along with that is all the administrative things, like just with like receipts and just like there's so many things I'm like trying to run, like ordering, like I'm
all the things.
so much, all the things,
Yeah.
hotels, cars, like travel. So yeah, it's just, you're pretty much like in so many different places, but that kind of adds to your experience of getting what it takes to actually make a TV show, and it's a lot. Yeah. And so during the course of production, we're on set for growing up, we were on set for 11 weeks, and just being in the field, kind of helping manage the crew and making sure that every day ran smoothly with our fearless leader, Nicole, and just making sure that we were delivering every single day. And then that was, growing up, it was a long multi-year experience, from development, pre-production, production, post, and then for Hair Tales, I was mostly working on in the post side as a story producer. I story produced like mostly three of the episodes, the Chica episode, the Issa Rae episode, and the Chloe Bailey episode, but also helped like post-produce all of them. And that story producing is a lot of fun. It's kind of like writing in docs, really. It's, you take all like the footage that our incredible production team, produced, and trying to assemble it together so that it makes a cohesive episode and a cohesive series. And that was just fantastic. I love to write, so that was kind of like my way of doing that in the story producing world. So yeah.
And it's really interesting too in documentary, like how much writing there actually is. So those that want to be in scripted and writing, and that you're getting documentary experiences, like don't think there's not writing in that, because you're writing when you're on set and you're like one of my favorite things is being an interviewer for a documentary set, because you're literally writing in the moment with the person. So you're figuring out how everything they're saying is going to take you through an episode or a film and all of that, and you're getting to write in that way. You do some writing before you get to that point, but then you're writing right then live. Racham is one of the best interviewers you'll ever meet, and I've learned my skills from her, and just really honing that. And then in post, you're writing with your editor the whole time, which is just such a cool thing, because it's real life and it's real things that you have, real tangible things that you have to work with.
I think like these two shows, especially the Hair Tales and Growing Up, are like just testaments to how like the medium of doc storytelling has really evolved. It's not just all like verite as like kind of like was like, even just a decade ago. It's like now like Growing Up is this hybrid doc series that uses like reenactments and like just really plays with all this beautiful cinematography and lighting, all these things, to create kind of new wave, doc storytelling. And same thing with the Hair Tales, is like kind of variety. We're jumping in and out of segments and things like that. So to Nicole's point, there's definitely a lot of like writing that goes involved.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, all of you. And, I think right now we are excited to hear your questions, because you have a little bit of a sense of all of the things that we do, but we want to make sure that we're getting to what it is that you all really want to know. So there's a microphone on this side, and you can just sort of line up, and we're going to prioritize students. And if you can just sort of announce your school, your name, and the school that you're associated with, and your question, and then we'll get into it.
Hi, my name is Talia. I'm at the Macaulay Honors College studying media.
Cool.
Professor Small is my teacher. So I was in class earlier this morning learning about how media, television, everything has been affected by the pandemic, which was kind of freaky, you know, it's like learning about yourself. And my professor said something really interesting, that a lot of streaming platforms have gone homogenous with their content, and even gave the example of like Sweden. Their local production companies have been tanking because a lot of shows these days look the same, they've got to feel the same. We didn't really talk that much about like your experiences working with like streaming platforms necessarily. And I know you guys are doing docs, but I want to know what any of you have to say about this homogenization and how you're fighting it and maintaining like individual creativity.
That's a good question. I can start on that. Well, I think, listen, you know, it's a very, very interesting time in our industry because streaming platforms have made it possible to do so much more. And although there is a real sense of like once one thing does well, everybody wants their version of that. So, and that's nothing new in the industry, but of course there is like a real sense of kind of being led by what's doing well instead of being the one to take the risk. So that's always hard. And so really being smart in your pitches about ensuring that you are showing people that you understand the landscape, you know what's doing well and why, but at the same time ensuring that you're adding some differentiation to it. Like, what are you adding to it? Because although I agree there is a lot of homogenization, there's probably 50 dating shows that look the same, but then there's a few that break through, right? Because they've identified a device or a piece that feels like it breaks through. And what's also happening with the streaming platforms is that there is so much that it is much harder to break through, whether that's scripted or doc, right? So you have to be thinking about not just great characters and not just, you know, great storytelling, but also great form. How can I break what is being done? How do I add some hybridization? How do I bring devices of scripted into my doc? How do I, you know, and all of that. So just always thinking about what's working is important, but at the same time ensuring that you are identifying your differentiating factor is really key. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I gotta write it down. Thank you.
What else?
Hi, my name is Isabella Frankie. I go to Birmingham Community College. And I guess my question is really about paths and where I should diverge. So I heard a lot about going the non-traditional route, which is like dropping out. And I would say I
hope I didn't go on for too long about it.
But coming from like second generation background, I am very heavily by my parents, you know, going towards, you know, I should be in college. I should, you know, be pursuing my bachelor's. And, you know, I've heard a lot about grad school. I've heard about Brooklyn colleges, their famous film school. And I'm like I'm 21 years old, and being in community college, I'm like kind of like geriatric over there, and I feel like I'm wasting away a little bit. But, you know, I'm approaching graduating soon, graduating in May next year for animations and motion graphics.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yes, thank you. But I really love combining both film and animation together. And I really like learning and putting myself out there and wanting to go out into the field of it, like for film or, you know, producing. And I'm not really sure if I should go, you know, take a break before transferring over to, you know, maybe NYU or, you know, Brooklyn College, because they do have amazing majors over there. But yeah, I'm not really sure if I should just take a break and, you know, put myself out there for the work and start like becoming a PA, you know, doing that little bit and then going into college again and really start learning, because I know it's really important to be efficient in the positions you want to pursue. So
I could say something. I think it depends on what you envision your end goal to be. I think going to grad school for film is great if you want to teach, even though you don't actually have to go to grad school if you want to teach. But that's sort of like the direct way to become Professor so-and-so is to get an MFA in something or other. I totally feel you. I too am an immigrant, child of, and you know, everyone's like, so PhD? You know, and you're like, that's not what I do. This is it's a practical field. And so having a degree in something, it's not medicine. It doesn't actually, what I need to do is actually have practical experience. I think that's what you need. I think that's what would be more useful for you if you want to perform animation, like create animation as opposed to teaching animation. Not to say that there's terrible things that will happen in a grad school. I think grad school can be great in terms of networking, in terms of being able to also have a place to practice and create things and have a soft landing when it sucks, because it will, because that's how life is, you know, like your first, and being able to do it at a slightly lower cost than what it would take to have things come out of your pocket. So, you know, those are all wonderful and important things about being in school and sort of using that path. But you're still going to have to come back and do the networking and get the practical experience anyways. So it's not like that's going to be the fast track for you and then you're just going to get an amazing job immediately. I mean, you could, but that's usually not the way that goes. So you can do both. You can go to school while you're, you know, finding out what kinds of, you know, there's all sorts of the joys of social media, right? There's all sorts of animation groups and writing groups and people who get together to read each other's scripts and to network at events and blah-de-blah-de-blah. How many film festivals do we have in New York, right? Like going to those, meeting filmmakers, watching films, showing up, asking people how they made their films, et cetera, et cetera. So you can still do those things and be in school. But if you feel like you're wasting away, maybe taking some time to PA is great. Maybe not. I mean, that's a little bit of the journaling and thinking about it, I suppose. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to come back and do the networking part. So now or later, that's what I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. My family's from Macedonia, and my grandmother, when I dropped out, lost her mind, and I was just going to community college. I was thinking I had all these delusions of grandeur of all these places I was going to go to college. And when you're 18, I don't think you really understand the amount of money you're actually signing up to pay, and you're just like, oh, people just pay for it with loans, and like that's a thing, I guess, and that's what everybody tells you, and then you're like, every dollar of that loan needs to be paid back. And so like I ended up going to community college to figure it out, and then I was like, nah, this is not for me, and that, which is fine whether education is your path or not. But my grandmother was like, I'll sell the house, I'm gonna sell the house if you promise you'll go back to school, and like all of these things, and it just wasn't my path. I mean, I even urge stronger before, unless that is the path, like Ek was saying, if you think you want to be in that teaching method, before going to grad school, really getting a little bit more experience into what division you want to get into. Because I know, you may fall in love with production. No one falls in love with production. You just like end up doing it. Yeah, exactly. And you're just like, oh, I just like making things happen. But yeah, PAing, post-PAing, I think IMDb and looking at credits is your greatest friend, because you can really see the things that you love. You can reach out to those companies, the things that you saw that you were like, wow, that was amazing. Like, these companies are real companies, and they're real people that hire, and a lot of time have amazing internship programs. And so going through that and looking and trying to freelance or come on for different gigs, both in production and in post-production, it sounds like for you, would be a really smart idea, so that you can even target your education further in that. But like college is, by the way, I felt with my friends that did go to film school and do all of those things, the network, and I think what Macaulay, what Robert was talking about, with Macaulay and introducing you to that network, that's so valuable. Like meeting those people and being able to do those things, that there's definitely value in that. So I don't mean to devalue any of those things when I talk about dropping out myself.
No, well, I would say, like, I think there's so many, like, to the networking point, like, there are so many Facebook groups, like, I need a producer, I'm a post PA or something, and, like, the producers of your favorite shows are in these groups, like,
Right.
and I'm, like, involved in all of them over the years, because I've just joined them over the years, and I'd encourage you to get on, like, Facebook and, like, search, like, New York film and TV groups. I'm looking for an assistant editor gig or animation. I need an animator gig. Like, I need animator groups. That I would join them all.
Yeah,
I think Made in New York has some resources
Made
on
in
their
New York has some
website
great-
too.
for sure.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Arauca Malay, and I'm a graduate from Bronx Community College.
Yay.
First of all, thank you so much. As a panel of all women, I think that's amazing. But I do have to ask, do you have any advice for any imposter syndrome, and especially when it comes to storytelling, being from the Bronx? I know there are so many stories that have gone untold, but I think we kind of fear, like, you know, this isn't our space, but it is. So I would like to know, how do you combat imposter syndrome if you've ever experienced it as a creative?
That's a good question. You want to start? You want to start, Equa? You want to start?
Sure, I'll go. How do I combat imposter syndrome? I have good friends who remind me. If it means writing affirmations to myself, I think, you know, I'm an observant person, so I'm the person who's like, and I'll just kind of watch the room and sort of see how it goes. And in that observation, what I've learned in the past, you know, because things have sort of accelerated for me in the past, I think it's 2 years now, since 2020, who knows how long it's been. But anyhow, that a lot of the people who who have these big, flashy, la 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 la, don't necessarily know that much more than I do. So there's been that, and there was quite a bit of disappointment and heartbreak from that. Like, it's taken so long just to get into this room, and finally, and it's like, you?
Yeah.
You're the one?
I can't believe this. So there's some anger there, and I had to work on that too. So I guess that's maybe the opposite of imposter syndrome, is just kind of like, I can't believe y'all kept me out of this room for this long just to come and find you here. But also just realizing, you know, when plugged into to something that I'm really engaged in, it has helped me to rely on the things that I know. I know women. I know black people. I know black people from a certain part of the world. I know music. I know there's a lot of different things that I know. That's actually why I'm here. If you're on a good set or in a good space, they will also know that that's why you're here, and that's what they want from you. They want to be able to tell an authentic story about the BX, and so that's why you're here. You know, because I can't do that. I'm not from there. I don't speak the language, or, you know, whatever the case is. Sometimes you'll find people who don't know that, and then that's where you have to politely maybe remind them that that's why you're here.
Yeah.
And that's what you know, and sort of being able to remind yourself, because I think one of the things that happens with racism, with sexism, with all the oppressions, is that it kind of makes you forget what you know, and who you are, you know, and you feel like you're not good enough because, I don't know, it hasn't been flashy in your life or something, but that there's value in your story and the perspective that you have. And so, and just whatever way you can remind yourself about that, if it's listening to things, watching things, being around certain people is great. And finding those people to be around or to call or to text or to follow on Instagram, whatever it is, finding your tribe. I guess that's what that means.
I just want to add one thing to that is, I think filmmaking, entrepreneurship, and many other careers, there is a period during which it's really, really important to protect your confidence and to be ruthless about what that means. And to add on to what Ekwa is saying, sometimes that means avoiding certain people and avoiding certain situations because you're vulnerable at a time where you're growing. And it's really important to say, you know what, that didn't make me feel great. So I'm just going to take a break from that for a minute and, build your confidence, protect that. And it's okay to feel insecure. It's natural, happens to me on a daily. And when I have that experience, I just take a moment to figure out, like, how do I protect myself in this moment? What do I need to push out? And what do I need to focus on? So just really being okay with sometimes saying, you know what, this situation or this person or this thing isn't helping me, so I'm gonna just take a break. And that is really important. And I think, imposter syndrome, insecurity, these things are tied together, but not being afraid of saying, I need a minute. And then figuring out how to build yourself up. And I think that is really crucial. And sometimes we tell people, like, get out there, fake it till you make it. And that's fine too. Sometimes you gotta do that. But sometimes it's okay to say, I need a minute. And I'm gonna figure it out and I'll be back.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Yeah.
I know that we're moving on, but the only thing that I will say is you belong here. And
Yeah.
I think that was something I had to tell myself over and over again, is like when I would be scared to be in rooms, like I was so used to kind of like sneaking into the party that when I was like supposed to be at the party, I was like, wait a minute, I don't actually belong here yet. Like, I'm not supposed to be invited. I don't have the skills. I'm not good enough. I'm not any of these things. And I think that realizing, it was tough for me to even identify that I was having those thoughts. So I think identifying that, like, oh, is insecurity what's keeping me back? Is having these doubts what's keeping me back? Being able to identify that, and then just reaffirming yourself, like whether you have to say it out loud over and over and over again, but I belong here. Like, and that's really important, and you belong here. So you should know that.
Yes. Thanks, Nicole. Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patty Sidney. I'm actually not a student. I actually align with your story, Nicole. I am a freelance coordinated producer, and I actually did drop out of college as well, but thankfully I was able to attend the Made in New York program, which helped me develop me as a PA and then to where I am now. My question is, how are you able, and sorry, just one really quick thing. I'm also learning, as they mentioned before, you're ever growing, ever learning. How are you able to obtain a development deal with these major networks?
Tell us.
I don't know. I had a lot of those. I think I'll be brief, but I think a development deal, it means 100 different things. First of all, it means many, many different things. And I think that it's a tough thing to get unless you've done some work, unless there's something to sort of build off of. But I think it's not just that, it's like before you even get to the development deal, you got to figure out who you need to talk to, like how do you get into the room with the right executive, and how do you get yourself to a place where you're able, that you've set yourself up for that executive to take you seriously. And this, again, leads back to all of the things that we're talking about, imposter syndrome, like privilege, different kinds of people getting opportunities and different people not. So there's so many things that get you to the point of being able to present yourself in the best way. And then I think with a dev deal, it's really just about having to me, on the executive side, I'm looking for someone who's done a great piece of work. And I'm like, that was really cool, and this person is worth investing in. I don't think that getting a development deal is not something that you would be able to do, in my experience, without having shown some promise or potential. So kind of leading back to what Ekwa said at the beginning is you have to build your reel and sort of show people what you're capable of. And then that is your best runway to say, invest in me. It could be a small amount, or it could just be your time. It could be a small amount of money, whatever it is. But this is an industry that's not about the paper degree. It's about, okay, cool, but show me what you've done. So I would say take the time to figure out what best represents you and use that as your calling card to say, invest in me, see what I can do.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even just to break it down, we weren't getting into rooms. We had a super lousy agent outside of WME, and then when WME signed us, that's when we really got into all the rooms and all of that. Like, we were kind of bridging around. So I think my advice to anybody that doesn't have an agent, like, it took a long time, and Resham crushed it,
And
as far as just constantly selling, and then at some point our agents even told us, they were like, just keep on pitching, and at some point the network will feel bad enough for you that they'll buy something from you.
It's true. But all that to say, I mean, listen, and that shouldn't be intimidating, because it is hard to get an agent, and that doesn't mean that, having an agent or having one of the big 3 agents is great, but yes, working to get to that, and the road to that is just constantly showing people what you can do.
Yeah. And so as part of that, though, then we now take on a lot of co-productions, right? We sign shopping agreements with a lot of outside producers or outside people that come in that they don't have an agent, but they have a great concept, they have a great idea, they pitch it to us, then we sign a shopping agreement together, then we package it and sell it to a network. And so we worked our way up to getting that agent, but so now we can be in that middle ground of working with the creatives and the people with the fresh ideas, as well as then bridging people and bringing people into those spaces.
And that's a good way to get into the mix, right? Instead of trying to go directly to the networks, reach out to the production companies that you like what they're doing, and try to talk with those producers and those heads of development and say, these are my ideas. That's a great way to step into that world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I'm a part of the Macaulay Honors College and Brooklyn College. And I was kind of wondering how, what are some ways that we can kind of gauge what type of content that networks or audiences might be more interested in, so we can kind of direct our focus towards that?
Focus your pitches, you're saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Anybody? Anybody?
You just haven't said anything.
I'd like to know the answer to that too.
Well, no, I mean, actually, I think because I have been in the room and watched, these women pitch shows, and as someone who struggles with creating a coherent sentence, the way they pitch shows that the presentations are just so articulate, intelligent, and compelling. So I would just actually love y'all to answer that.
Thank you. So we planted that answer. I would say great stories. It all just always comes back to great stories. Everybody's looking for a great story, and it's interesting in the documentary world. There's a reason why the Star Wars and the Harry Potters and the Black Panthers of the world, why they reach us and why they touch us, and it's because it's a great story. And so really when networks understand that, and they're looking for the next thing that's going to hook viewers, and so we just always keep our eye out for great stories. I know that Ray probably has a more nuanced answer.
I mean,
Ekwa would love.
Yeah, anything. How do you think about what you want to pitch? Yeah, exactly.
I just think about what I would be happy to spend 3 to 5 years working on.
Yeah,
That's what I think of, because that's what it's going to take. For me, as a director, producer, writer, what won't drive me crazy, or what will I actually enjoy? You don't want to start on something that was a great idea 5 years ago, and now you're like, God, this thing, I can't believe I have to keep working on this. You're not gonna, that's not gonna be a good product. So something that excites you.
Yeah. Actually, I will add. I think that's actually so important. I think about Toni Morrison is one of my favorite writer, and she write the book that you want to read. And I always kind of apply the same thing, that same kind of mantra to film and TV making, is what you actually want to see is what you should produce. It should be authentic to actually yourself, and not anything that's like a pretense or what you think. I think actually you kind of fail when you try to create things you think people want to hear. Like when I, just like pitched like, Ray, like the Black Women in Rock and Roll series. Like that's something that I wanted to see. That's something that I was passionate about. Like I was a Black woman who listened to a lot of rock music. I know that. And so like, and I knew that these women, I knew what the kind of company that they were trying to create and what kind of stories that they were interested in telling. And so it just made sense. And so I felt like it was very natural for me. So like I feel if you're when you start making things and you're pitching things, like there should be that authenticity there.
Yeah. And we have 2 people online, so we'll take both of your questions, but we'll have to be quick. Or we just have one more question. Is that right? Oh yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Alex.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Deandra Simon. I just recently graduated from Brooklyn College graduate program
All right.
in media
Congrats.
studies.
Awesome.
Yeah, so really excited to be with you all tonight. My question is geared towards the development process. So myself, I'm interested in the unscripted space, and I noticed that before you create the treatment and the scissor reel and the pitch that you're presenting to, different production companies or bigger networks, I know there's a great deal of research that goes into that process. And myself, as a former English major that's also interested within this space, I'm curious to know some advice that you can give about what the research process looks like outside of just looking at content.
For developing a pitch for creating a pitch for a development reel or
Yes.
something like that. I look at things by people whose work I admire or stories that I'm terrible with names, for example, of films, so I'll always be like, what was that film about the thing? But so whatever it is that stays with me is like, okay, there's something there. And maybe I'll watch the film again to try and figure out what it is, and, or I'm working on a pitch right now, so I'll look up films that I thought were beautiful, so look up if they have like the director on shot deck, or the DP on shot, so using a bit of IMDb as well.
And Shot Deck is a platform. If
Thank
you
you.
don't know Shot Deck, this will help you build all of your decks. You look, and it's the most cinematic shots. If you go to Shot Deck, create an account, but then you can search anything, and it's shots of movies, and they show you the frame, the lens that was used, the camera that was used, all of it. But like anytime you see a really impressive deck, you're like, oh wow, how did people put that together? They're using Shot Deck because it's like the most beautiful images.
Right, and you can search in a lot of different ways. You can search by directors' names, by film names, by,
Theme.
underwater scenes, or, things that took place on Mars, or, whatever, like different things like that, depending on what it is that you're looking for, what it is that you're trying to compile. That's what I do.
Yeah, Charisse, how did you research everything for your deck for?
It was, a lot of reading. Like different books on like Black women and rock, and then just a lot of research, and that the typical, more in that kind of academic kind of side of thing. That I think that you being an English major will actually really help. But like I think that cultural awareness is like so important when coming into like it's Culture House, right? Like I think it's so important. Like I remember a professor. I was not a great student, but one thing I did take away from this one professor was that she would like kind of quiz us. It was a producing class. She would quiz us on like the news, some pop quizzes, and actually that skill that was actually really did translate into my. One of my first like assistant jobs, because my boss would like sometimes like ask me like on the daily, what's going on, and then expect me to kind of like tell him what's going on in the world. And I think that's really important. So like as you're like researching, like just reading the news, being aware of what's going on, because you're storytelling for actual world that does not live in a vacuum, right? It's like we are like if you're going to be storytelling, like your audience, like what are they being influenced by? What are they talking about? What are they experiencing? What's in their minds every day? And so I would, whatever you're writing, whatever reason, just be in the know about like politics, issues, pop culture. Like just, I would continue going down that path in whatever you're creating.
That's smart.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. This was such a wonderful panel, and
Great questions.
yes, love your questions, and wishing all of you so much luck as you continue on in your careers. Exciting times. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.